In 2025, AI generates more designs in a single day than every human designer in history combined. And yet, handmade things have never been more expensive. A friend of mine spent an entire month's salary on a handbag. Not because she needed it. She already had 7. She bought it because on that bag's tag was a story about who she is. That is the world we're living in now, a world of production, but meaning scarcity. Today we're not talking about marketing tactics. We're going to pull apart a genuinely counterintuitive idea. Why the easier something is to make, the more we're willing to pay for the version that is hard to get. This comes from Canadian economist Thompson's book, The Curious Economics of Luxury Fashion, a framework that is quietly reshaping every industry, not just fashion. If you just want a quick answer to, how should I price my product? The book gives you a blunt one, charge more. But if you want to understand why in an age when almost anything can be manufactured cheaply, expensive has itself become rare? This book might change the way you see the entire business world. Here is the first thing Thompson establishes, and it really does flip everything you learned in economics class. In the luxury world, pricing works in reverse. Thompson writes, luxury pricing starts with where the brand sits, then asks what the target customer is willing to pay at maximum, and works backwards from there. Cost is the output, not the input. We've been taught the opposite for centuries. Cost determines price, raw materials, plus labor, plus margin equals the sticker. That is elementary school math. But luxury says, no, price determines cost. I decide I am selling this for $100,000. Then I work backwards. What does my cost structure need to look like to make that viable? Hermans will never sit you down and talk about the cost of their leather. What they'll talk about is how many hours a single artisan spent on one bag. They'll show you their atelier outside Paris. They'll tell you how many years it takes to go from apprentice to master craftsperson. None of that narrative has a direct relationship to the price of the hide. What you are paying for is the story built around time, craft, heritage, and mystery, not the material. The meaning, why does this work? Because humans have never only calculated economic value when deciding what to pay for something. We're simultaneously calculating meaning value. When we can feel the origin of something, that real humans spent extraordinary time on it, that a rare craft was involved, that something was handed down through generations, our willingness to pay goes up, not because the practical utility increased, because the sense of meaning increased. The luxury industry was the first to systematically exploit this secret. They understood that pricing isn't fundamentally about calculating costs and margins. It is about managing and amplifying meaning. Consider the Bentley Bentayga. Manufacturing cost, roughly $100,000. Sale price, $250,000. What does that extra $150,000 buy you? Not a faster engine, not a more comfortable seat. You are buying a racing pedigree dating to 1919. You are buying 100 hours of hand labor from craftsmen in Crewe, England. You are buying a silent declaration that says, I've made it to the point where I have nothing left to prove. There is no formula for pricing that, because it isn't about the car. Here is where it gets interesting. If luxury prices aren't driven by quality, what is the relationship between the two? It is not what most people assume. The iPhone sells for $1,600, roughly 1.5 to 2 times more than other flagship smartphones. Is it high quality? Absolutely. Is it a luxury product? No. The relationship between luxury and quality works like this. Quality is a baseline requirement, but what actually drives the price is scarcity and narrative. Apple charges more because it delivers a functionally irreplaceable experience. Hermes charges more because beyond the functional, it has built an entire story system around heritage, chance encounters, and deliberate mystery. Apple makes you feel like you have the best tool. Hermes makes you feel like you are a particular kind of person. And that distinction, tool versus identity, is the entire reason price and quality can come apart. Thompson's book is essentially answering one question: how do you make expensive work? Not as an ethical question, as a technical one. His argument: every consumer product can be rebuilt using luxury logic. Take the toy industry. Historically brutal economics, average net profit margins under 5%, pure volume play, intense competition. Then Pop Mart came along and broke the industry's profit structure. Their net profit margins have reached 30%. For context, Apple, one of the most profitable tech companies on earth, runs at around 25% net margins. A toy company operating in the same tier. And what is Pop Mart selling? A small plastic figure. What customers are actually buying is the thrill of pulling a rare variant from a blind box. The satisfaction of completing a series. The identity statement of this character represents my emotional state right now. Yes, you paid $40 for an emotional state. In this economy, emotional states have a market price. Before Pop Mart, no toy brand had ever made serious money by simply charging more for a product. They proved something. Price can fully decouple from cost. If value is anchored in story rather than material, this logic isn't staying in the luxury lane. It is spreading across every consumer category. Not because it is more manipulative, but because in a world of product saturation, the only things that can sell at a significant premium above cost are products with a story attached. Thompson puts it this way: if price isn't determined by cost, what determines it? Story, but stories can't be conjured from nothing. They need a vehicle. That vehicle is deliberately engineered scarcity. Scarcity is not an outcome, it is an instrument. Thompson identifies 3 mechanisms luxury brands use to engineer it: allocation systems, quantity control, and inventory management. Allocation. The ritual of qualification Hermes. Allocation system is the most famous piece of engineering in the luxury world. Want a Birkin? First, spend roughly $15,000 on other Hermes products. Scarves, belts, fragrances. Prove you belong before you are allowed to buy. This isn't a barrier. It is a ritual. Think of it like trying to get tickets for your favorite band. You wait in line for hours, and then you absolutely post about it afterward. The extra time, effort, and social cost you spent aren't wasted. They are the product. The obstacle itself is part of what you paid for. Inventory. Burning $37 million was the rational choice in its 2017 to 2018 annual report. Burberry disclosed that they had destroyed $37 million worth of finished goods in a single year, mostly clothes, over 5 years. They incinerated $135 million in inventory, straight into the fire. Official reason: protecting brand value. I need to stop here for a second. $37 million of clothes. On fire, your first reaction might be, have these people lost their minds? Picture the scene: a brand director facing a warehouse full of unsold trench coats. Option 1, discount and clear inventory. Recover maybe $18 million in cash. Option 2, burn it. He chose option 2, not because he was reckless, because he did the math. If those coats sold at 50% off, the customers who paid full price feel betrayed. Worse, every potential customer who was planning to pay full price now starts waiting for sale season. Nobody wants to be the person who paid twice what they needed to. Once that wait for the discount mentality takes root, the brand's pricing power is gone. And once pricing power is gone, the marketing spend and years required to restore it far exceeds $37 million. From a long-term value perspective, burning the clothes was the more rational decision. Sometimes the most counterintuitive choice is the coldest calculation. This same logic played out in an industry you probably haven't heard of: Chinese fine gold jewelry. For context, the traditional gold jewelry market, brands like Chow Tai Fook and Chow Sang Sang, which collectively have thousands of stores across Asia, has always operated on a single pricing model. Gold is priced by the gram. Today's spot price plus a small craftsmanship fee. That is your bracelet price. It is a terrible business model, high capital costs, huge operational exposure. And at the end of it all, your margins are barely better than a savings account. Nobody questioned this model for decades. Then, a brand called Lao Piu Gold said no. They decided to sell by the piece, not by the gram. Fixed price, you are not buying grams of gold. You are buying design, craft, heritage, and a brand. What justified the premium? Lao Piu's core proposition is imperial court goldsmithing. Ancient Chinese techniques including filigree and inlay work, classified as intangible cultural heritage, handed down through imperial court traditions across dynasties. The bracelet on your wrist isn't jewelry. It is 1,000 years of craft. In Lao Piu's pricing system, the gold became the carrier. The real value is the non-gold thing attached to it. Court-level artisanship and centuries of tradition. The results, in 2024, 36 Lao Piu Gold Street ores generated $1.35 billion USD in revenue, average revenue per store, roughly $37 million per year, one store outperforming dozens of competitors. This is the logic of the mature market era. Don't chase volume, chase revenue per unit. Scale should mean scaling profit, not scaling store count. Back to Thompson's central argument. Engineered scarcity only works if people believe the story. In an era of information overload, how do you make a story stick? The answer is one of the most counterintuitive ideas in the book. Luxury advertising is not aimed at buyers. Thompson writes, the target audience for luxury advertising is the people who will never be able to afford it, but who absolutely must know the brand exists. Your awareness of the brand matters more than whether you buy it. The CEO of Hermès once said, "We don't have a marketing department because Hermès itself is a marketing company. From the location of every store, to interior design, to how staff are trained, to which events the CEO attends, every decision serves marketing. Product and marketing aren't sequential. They're the same thing. The store location is a sale. The packaging is a sale. The scent the sales associate is wearing is a sale." Hermès sits at the top of the luxury pyramid. No brand ambassadors, no paid celebrity deals. Instead, it lets its own customers, the socialites, the quietly powerful, do the talking, and those customers are more convincing than any paid spokesperson could ever be. For one simple reason, they bought it themselves. The great luxury origin stories were never written in conference rooms. They arrived with just the right amount of accidental. Take the Birkin. Sometime around 1981, British actress Jane Birkin was on a flight and found herself seated next to Jean-Louis Dumas, then CEO of Hermes. She complained she couldn't find a bag big enough to hold her daughter's baby bottle. He sketched a design on an air sickness bag on the spot. On an air sickness bag. That detail alone is priceless. No PR team could have invented it, precisely because it sounds too real to be invented. The story circulates in different versions, but the core never changes. It is a legend that couldn't have been planned. If Hermes had paid someone to write that story, it would be worth nothing. What makes it valuable isn't the details. It is that it doesn't look like a story. The Kelly bag follows the same logic. Grace Kelly, Princess of Monaco, used the bag to shield her pregnancy from photographers. The photo ran on the cover of Life magazine. 0 in endorsement fees. The image turned the bag into an icon. This same dynamic is playing out right now in the global pop culture market. Labubu, a blind box character from Chinese toy company Pop Mart, was born in 2019. For nearly 5 years, it sat in relative obscurity. Then in 2024, Lisa from Blackpink was photographed at an airport with a Labubu keychain hanging from her bag. She has over 100 million Instagram followers. Within weeks, Labubu was sold out globally. Labubu hadn't changed, not one detail, for 5 years. It was exactly the same. What changed was this: the right person, in a sufficiently casual setting, with a sufficiently natural gesture, put it on display. After that, everyone suddenly found it charming. Every "oh my god, so cute." And where do I get one comment you saw after that? All of it came after Lisa's airport photo, 4 years earlier. Nobody thought Labubu was cute, not because it wasn't, but because it didn't have a story yet. That is the power of organic endorsement. No script, no budget. But it is something no advertising budget can buy. You can't plan a legend. You can only be ready when the accidental moment arrives. This is why luxury marketing increasingly doesn't look like marketing. Brands aren't loudly announcing, "We're expensive and rare." They're positioning themselves in unexpected corners and waiting to be discovered. Like a sketch on an air sickness bag, like a photo taken to block a camera, like a keychain glimpsed at an airport gate. The most expensive marketing looks like it cost nothing. AI is making production cheaper at a rate that would have seemed impossible 5 years ago. A designer using AI can now output in a day what used to take a year. A writer can produce in an hour what used to take a week. AI doesn't create demand. It doesn't make consumers want to buy more things. Supply is growing exponentially. Demand is still roughly what it was. The result: price wars, margin compression, a race to the bottom. This is exactly where the luxury counterplay becomes most valuable. I am not joining the price war. I am not chasing scale. I am not trying to serve everyone. I only serve people who are willing to pay for the story. So in a world where AI can generate everything, what still commands a premium? The answer is the things AI cannot generate. AI cannot generate 200 hours of hand labor. AI cannot generate a racing pedigree from 1919. AI cannot generate a chance encounter on a flight. AI cannot generate the photograph that ran on a magazine cover without a cent in endorsement fees. These are the new scarce things. These are the new luxury. Dior's recent price increases follow the same logic. By raising prices 30%, they effectively priced out a portion of their aspirational middle class, customer base, and concentrated their revenue in fewer, higher value customers. total profit up. Thompson makes the point directly. In a saturated market, increasing value matters far more than expanding scale. When the market stops growing, the only path to revenue growth is higher value per transaction. Luxury is just this logic taken to its extreme. So brands use price to filter customers and story to manufacture scarcity. But as a consumer, how do you know when you are paying for value versus paying for a very well-constructed illusion? There is a common misconception. Wealthy people buy luxury goods because the amounts are trivial to them. Pocket change, that is not quite right. Someone earning $5 million a year spending $50,000 on a bag, and someone earning $50,000 a year spending $500 on a bag. As a percentage of income, those are identical decisions. Both are 1%. But those $2 play completely different roles. For the first person, that 1% exists inside a financial structure with significant assets, savings, and investments underneath it. The bag doesn't affect next month's rent. For the second person, $500 might be everything left over after the month's necessities are covered. One person's 1% is entertainment. The other person's 1% is what is left, completely different psychological ledgers. A wealthy person buying a $250,000 Bentley understands clearly that they've paid a significant premium for a story. They accept the trade. What they're actually buying is certainty, this brand, this price point, this social signal, all pointing toward a single message. I am someone who no longer has anything to prove to anyone. To them, that signal is worth the premium. But someone spending 3 months' salary on a bag is hoping to buy a transformation. After this, I'll be different. The problem is that luxury has never sold transformation. It sells confirmation. It confirms that you already belong. If you don't yet belong, it won't get you there. The people most susceptible to being sold the illusion are not the very wealthy and not people who clearly can't afford it. It is the people in between, those trying to use consumption to cross a threshold, because luxury, by design, doesn't serve crossing thresholds. It serves confirming you've already crossed one. Hermes doesn't lower its prices to court the middle class. Dior raises its prices to push the middle class out. Neither decision comes from arrogance. Both come from the same business logic. The model depends on scarcity. The moment a product is everywhere, the luxury is gone. A Hermes bag, its core value isn't the texture of the crocodile leather. It isn't the density of the stitching. Its core value is this: the way people look at you when you walk into a room carrying it. That social signal, that statement of identity. You can't calculate it from material costs, but it has a very real price in the social world. And here is the uncomfortable part. We rarely want to admit that what we're buying isn't just a physical object. It is the symbol system the object carries. What we're actually purchasing is emotion, identity, belonging, the feeling of not being left out. The moment we're honest enough to acknowledge that, that is when consumption starts to become a conscious choice. This brings us to something that looks like a purely financial point, but is actually existential. A lot of companies operate on the grow, now profit later model, lose money for a few years. Capture market share, once scale is there, costs come down, margins improve. This worked in a growing market, in a saturated market. In an era where black swan events are happening with increasing frequency, this model is becoming genuinely dangerous. Take memory chips. According to reporting from TrendForce and the Register in February 2026, DRAM contract prices rose 90% in a single quarter, from Q4 2025 to Q1 2026. NAND flash was up 60% across all of 2025. What does that mean for a hardware company? If your product runs on 5 to 10% net margins, and chips are 40% of your cost structure, a doubling in chip prices increases your total costs by 40%. A 5% margin goes negative immediately. The more you sell, the more you lose. This wasn't a failed strategy. This was a good strategy getting destroyed by an external shock. And in today's environment, external shocks are essentially guaranteed. You just don't know when they come or what shape they take. Geopolitical tensions, supply chain fractures, AI-driven demand spikes. Any of these can move your costs to an unbearable level within weeks. And this isn't just a chip industry problem. It is becoming the operating reality for most manufacturing sectors. In this environment, a thin margin means almost no buffer. One shock and you are losing money. A high margin is the buffer. It is not greed. It is a risk management tool. When your net profit margin is high enough, you can absorb 1 or 2 unexpected hits without touching the foundation. You can still afford to think long-term, while everyone else is being forced to cut. And when you look at the margins of the world's top tech companies through that lens, the numbers take on a completely different meaning. Microsoft runs at 35% net margins, Apple at over 25%. Yes, these numbers are supported by tech monopolies and ecosystem lock-in. But the value of high margins is consistently underestimated. It lets these companies keep investing in research and development, while everyone else is cutting, and hold their pricing steady while competitors are getting crushed by rising costs. Everyone talks about long-term thinking in business, but what actually enables long-term thinking isn't mindset. It is money in the bank. A company at 5% margins faces every decision as a survival question. They can't think about next year because next month's payroll is already uncertain. A company at 30% margins can spend 3 years testing a direction that might not work. The quality of decision-making is structurally different. There is a common misconception: high profit equals profiteering, equals exploiting the consumer. But in an era of frequent black swan events, that equation needs to be re-examined. High margins aren't the result of greed. They're a tool for navigating uncertainty, the ballast that keeps a company upright in a storm. And this isn't a privilege reserved for luxury brands. It is the fundamental DNA of any company that wants to survive long-term. In this era, a high margin means you simply have more lives than your competitors, and lives are the most valuable thing a company can have. None of this is a moral judgment. The logic of luxury pricing is like gravity. It exists whether we approve of it or not. The right question isn't whether it is ethical. It is whether you understand it clearly enough to make your own choices inside it. Every purchase is, in some sense, a vote. You are taking the money in your hands and directing it toward a business model, a set of values, a particular way of understanding the world. But this isn't about saying buying expensive is right or buying cheap is wrong. It is not that simple. Mixu Ice Cream and Tea, one of China's largest beverage chains, sells lemonade for under $0.6 a cup. But their net margins approach 20% because they built a model of unbeatable efficiency, scale, and brand penetration at the low end of the market. Lao Piu Gold sells gold jewelry at extraordinary premiums. Mixu Ice Cream and Tea charges almost nothing. But they both did the same essential thing within their own price bracket. They built an irreplaceable narrative. The question is never about the price level. The question is, do you know what you are actually buying? Before your next purchase with a price tag that makes you hesitate. I want to leave you with 3 questions. 1. Am I buying function or identity? Is the primary value of this thing solving a practical problem or defining who I am? 2. If this product had no logo and nobody knew the brand, would I pay the same price? 3. Am I paying for ownership, or am I paying to not be excluded? What I am afraid of losing, the thing itself, or the social tier the thing represents. There are no right answers. These are just 3 flashlights to help you see the real reason behind each choice you make. Knowing what you are actually purchasing, then buy it freely or don't buy it freely. This is the most important power a consumer has. The economics of luxury points toward a reality that is only getting clearer. Luxury logic is becoming the survival logic for every industry. Not because you should pursue more expensive things, but because when production is no longer scarce, real scarcity moves somewhere else, to meaning, story, identity, and belonging. We have never only bought products, we buy the stories products carry, and the answer those stories offer to the question of who we are. Next time you are looking at a price tag that seems impossibly high, don't rush to judge it. Ask yourself, am I buying a product or am I buying a story about who I am? And is that story worth the price? That question has no wrong answer, but it has to be yours to ask, not the brand's to answer for you. I am Dr. Lumen. If you are interested in the economics of meaning and what it means to build something that matters in the AI era, subscribe and leave a comment. See you next time.